Well, Steve, thanks so much for coming. We'll get started. I know a few more people will probably be flowing in, but wanted to kick off to respect everybody's time for half an hour. I know based on our conversations, I could spend the next several hours talking to you. You've just got some amazing insights. For everybody on the call, I had the good pleasure of meeting Steve over a year ago through our good mutual friend, Chris Lyons. We'll give Chris a shout out. Who is just a wonderful human being, but truly a walking LinkedIn, and figured out that Steve and I might have some commonality, and then got to watch Steve build Imagine AI Live, which for those of you interested in AI that have not been there before, I will not steal Steve's thunder. I will simply say, definitely look into next year's Imagine AI Live conference, as well as what Steve and I were just talking about, some of the one-day sessions that they're going to do. So let's just kick off there, Steve. As the founder of, I believe, the world's first cross-industry, cross-functional AI conference, Imagine AI Live, you're not an AI junkie or a techie, I should say. You're an AI junkie now, but you weren't out programming in AI before. What inspired you to bring together professionals from various backgrounds to discuss AI?
Yeah, and I think the great way to answer that is my background. So I've done a lot of things in my career. I started off in management consulting, did a lot of tech, but I used to code a long time ago. Uh, so I worked for what's now called Accenture, big consulting firm, and got my professional career kicked off that way. Ended up working in enterprise software back during the B2C, B2B days in the early 2000s. Got a great taste of an experience with a Silicon Valley, venture-backed company that was growing very quickly. So I understand a lot about enterprise software. But probably the most important thing was I had the pleasure and the opportunity to build a company. I built an industrial tech company with a co-founder of mine. Ran that for about over 15 years. We were selling technology around the world into industrial applications. It was a UV-based company, so we sold a lot into printing and packaging. And as the CEO of the company, I had to wear every single hat. We weren't just selling software; we were selling capital equipment, marketing, sales, ops, everything. So I've had my hand in about every function of a business. And we exited that company, got acquired about 7 years ago now by a much bigger industrial company. And I stayed around for a while. I've been basically kind of the entrepreneur in residence, sort of the digital service consultant in-house for this about a $3.5 billion company called Barry Wehmiller. And what happened was when Gen AI hit the scene, I'm one of these guys that's always experimenting with ways. How do you automate stuff? How do you get more done? With the limited resources that we all have. And when Gen AI happened and I got on the wait list of ChatGPT like everybody else, and I finally got through it, I think it was in early December of 22, and just started playing around with these language models. It was just absolutely astounding to me that, after you write a few poems and it blows you away, and it's like, what else can you do with this thing? And so then my mind started going back to business. Or if I'm building a business, what could I do? And of course, you start thinking sales and marketing. It can help write copy. It can do all these things. But the rate at which it was coming out, it occurred to me there's got to be a conference or a place we can go to where we can immerse ourselves as business leaders. Well, if you survey the conference landscape, and there are good conferences for AI, you've got the NeurIPS, the stuff where the builders go, the guys that are building the models, and you've got the big tech ecosystem events, NVIDIA and all the this week we've had quite a few of those, and next week we'll have another with Microsoft. So you have all these events, but they tend to be sort of one side of the story. They're going to kind of bias towards their stack. And then you've got other events that are happening, but they tend to be in the Bay Area and the San Fran, and that's like an insiders club. You sort of almost have to. They tend to be a little more developer focused, not so much pedestrian business person focused, right? And so I couldn't find one. And one of the things that we had done in my last, the last 15 years with the industrial tech business is we built a conference in Las Vegas to help promote what we were doing in the kind of the create a conference for the ecosystem. And it worked extremely well. In fact, we still produce that event. And so I started thinking, what if we took some lessons learned from that conference and we applied it to kind of a generalist AI conference for business leaders, professionals, enterprises, kind of up and down the scale. And what if we don't restrict it to one function? Because you do have conferences that focus on sales and marketing. You can go down that rabbit hole, and there's a lot of conferences pivoting. Then you've got, vertical industry events that happen. But what if you were to think like a CEO and a founder, and you wanted to look across the entire span of your, every function of your business? And then what if you didn't want to be limited to thinking just about your own industry? Because oftentimes, if you come up like a periscope and spun around and looked at what other people are doing, you can cross-pollinate ideas a lot faster. So that was the sort of the genesis of this conference would be great, and I can't find it, so let's just create it. And that was the origin story of Imagine AI Live, and then found a few willing people to help, some co-founders and some others, and next thing you know, we had 500 people in Las Vegas at the Fountain Blue. So
Steve,
there you
I
go.
will tell you, it was impressive when we first founded Boodle. The first budget I put together, I put in front of investors. One of the investors looked at it and scolded me for not having any budget for conferences. And I just always come from a mindset: conferences are boondoggles, they're waste of time, they're, go down the laundry list. We proved out we're a data-driven company. We proved out with our legacy platform that conferences were very valuable. They were a great source. It was a great way to show the platform and what we were doing. And so we've continued to explore conferences, and I've been to many. I have to say that was the singular best inaugural conference I've ever been to. I've probably been to about a dozen first-time conferences, and you can tell they're first-time conferences. Honestly, could not tell Imagine AI Live was a first-time conference. And it's probably one of the top 5 conferences I've been to. And
That's
what
fantastic.
what I gauge from that is the interactions people had. There was a lot of like people were really pulled between do I sit in this session or do I want to go talk to the person I just heard in the last session because I get the chance to, right? I think what was also very impressive for me is while it was a great business opportunity and we found a lot of great business partners, there are people like you and I just talked about Alex. There's no business for Alex and I to do together except to nerd out on AI. And we're able to do that and to have those type of relationships that have built, I think we're phenomenal. So congratulations to you guys in what you built there.
Thanks. No, we're so excited. Like I said, we're already planning the next one in July in New York. So it's going to be a concentrated single day event, but we just want to keep going because there isn't a resource quite like this. And I think we've got some learnings on how to make it really valuable for everybody who attends. So thanks for that.
I look forward to hearing about the July one. So one of the things that gets talked a lot or is getting talked about more is you talked about sitting down with your instance of ChatGPT. A lot of people are using, well, I won't say a lot, but a good number of people are using generative AI. Very few have really adopted it. One of the reasons people kind of posit on the reason they haven't adopted it is it doesn't lend itself naturally towards teamwork. And so there's a lot of tools that are coming out there trying to build towards that. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you define AI teamwork, and maybe dig into a little bit about why it's going to be so crucial for businesses to really embrace the concept of AI teamwork if they're going to succeed in an age of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and actually I'll give you some sort of real life examples. So obviously, I'm my own guinea pig when it comes to AI. So I challenge myself literally every day. And actually, when I give talks to companies and leaders, you probably saw me do this in Las Vegas. I start with a show of hands, like how many of you guys have used ChatGPT or something like it, Claude, whatever, Gemini. And now most hands go up. Pretty much, you have almost 100%. And then okay, well, how many use it, at least weekly for something? A lot of the hands go down, but a lot of people are still up at they're how many of you use it daily? Then more hands drop. How many of you use it every hour of every day for something? And usually you're down to maybe less than 10%. Depends on the room you're talking to. If you're
Sure.
talking to a bunch of AI enthusiasts, their hands are still going to be up. But so why is that, right? And that's the thing that has got me going. So I've made a challenge to myself, and I really think it's more exercising new muscle memory. Okay, I've got a cognitive task. This morning I had it's just some random example with Barry Waymiller, my main client right now. They're trying to create a chatbot that's trained on this is industrial converting machines that's trained on the manuals of those machines as well as service reports and things like that they can integrate for their own customers that call with troubleshooting questions. Well, one of the engineers had a great idea, like, well, why don't we just train it all the way down to the programmable logic controllers and the code that exists that controls the machine itself. I'm like, that's a brilliant idea. But the problem is we need a system prompt for that. So if you just throw that into ChatGPT, you throw in a, dump of a, a file, it's not going to know what it's looking at. So again, went to ChatGPT. Actually, the new 4.0 is pretty slick. And I said, I just need help designing the prompt for it. And it gave us a killer prompt. So it's stuff like that. So, but I'm training myself to every single time we need to do something, think about how can AI make that thing better, make that cognitive task better. So now back to your question about teamwork. Okay, so if you've got somebody in an organization who's way ahead, I'm trying to, the people I interact with, I try to push them, where it's almost like a competition. Let's set the bar a little higher. And it's like literally doing and teaching by example. Look what I just did. Look what I just did. And then it creates this flywheel effect inside of teams. The problem that we've got though is we're still kind of siloed with the tech. Like I'll have to send well, here, I just did this in Claude. Now I got to send you a link to it, and it's just messy right now. There's not a lot of organization around what could be a really great approach to sort of team-based chat, team-based prompting. And having a platform that can allow you to do that, it also shows the people that are sort of furthest ahead in their thinking. They can be the examples. They can create what I call giga prompts for other people. It allows them to sort of bring the rest of the band up to speed, with the top musician in the band, whoever that is, and then what people love to do, I'm noticing with AI, is that once they get the bug, it's like, oh, check this out, or it becomes really inspirational, and you want to share that. And I think that's how we're going to get there faster, is literally by sharing the techniques, sharing how we're doing it almost live in real time.
Well, and that was, as you know, and you saw, we introduced it at the conference, is the group chat feature. So the ability for people to watch people who are more experienced in a context of a team meeting. And we've had that happen internally to Boodle. We had, my co-founder obviously loves to nerd out on this and has come up with all of the ways you can put the system through the paces. And in a team meeting was doing something and heard one of our team members pop up and say, wait, we can do that in Boodle? And it was just, our team teaching our team how to use it.
Yep.
And so everybody's going to nerd out in their own way. As you said, people intuitively head down their own routes. And so being able to allow people to learn rather than having to sit down and, okay, today's going to be training day. We're going to talk about theoretical ways that you can use this new technology. Instead, no, they get to watch in the context of a meeting an actual objective get completed and then carry that with them to teach someone else down the road.
Oh, I love it. And to me, it's contagious learning. It's like, it's okay. Wow, that was cool. I'm going to do that. And the fact that you can do it so fast, you could say, oh, I'm going to riff on that idea right now on this other project I had, this other task I had. And so that to me, I think the big friction point with organizations now is how do you deploy it faster and prevent this situation where you've got some people that are so far ahead on AI prompting and just workflowing it, that it starts to make other people anxious, or, no, that's dangerous. And then they become sort of the counterweight to that, then you take, it's literally, I've seen it happen already with companies and teams. Like the people that aren't doing it get a little nervous, and then they become hall monitors, and then that's not what you want at all.
No, not at all. You used a term a minute ago, muscle memory, which I really enjoy, because the muscle memory we have now is to go to Google, right? 20 years of Google conditioning, we type in the word Chinese restaurants and Google gives us 20 links. And as you know, you'd punch Chinese restaurants, I don't care if it's ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and it doesn't do a real good job with it, right? You need something a little bit more. Aside from muscle memory not being there, and aside from what you just talked about, there's a growing divide between the ones who are able to do Gen AI and the ones who are not. What are the other big obstacles that you see within organizations on their adoption of AI? And what are your hopes in what's going to basically help combat that, mitigate that?
Yeah, I think sort of there's just this general, almost like a paralysis in some of the companies I've heard. Is like, let's just wait till we're a Microsoft shop. Let's just wait till Microsoft gives us Copilot. Or let's wait till Google rolls out, the things that they just announced 2 days ago. There's almost like the obstacle of, well, we'll be taken care of somehow. And I'm like, no, that's not the answer. Every single person if they understood what's happening sort of, and they were intellectually honest about what's happening in our society and with this tech, it's growing exponentially. So the sooner we start developing these skills, learning from each other, even if it's a little messy at times, it's going to be so much more valuable, regardless of which models will win the day or which tools will win the day. You'll be able to play all of them easier, better. And I will say, and no offense to Microsoft, anybody from Microsoft's on this call, they've restricted Copilot. You can't. A Copilot chatbot for most organizations is limited to a context input window of only 2,000 characters. You can't even finish 3 sentences on a prompt. So once you realize the power of a really good prompt, you're gonna want to write like a half a page or more. So little things like that I think people don't understand. I think that they're becoming almost the people that haven't really embraced it or really haven't tried to understand, a little bit about what's under the hood and how this stuff works, are going to make poor decisions about the tech, and that's going to artificially constrain, I think, some of the advantages that they can bring to, their whatever it is they're trying to do as a company. So that's the thing I see the most of, in addition to some of the anxiety that's setting in, but the good news is there are ways to combat it, but you have to be, I'll use that term again, intellectually honest about what's happening. You have to understand some of the basics of a large language model. The context window length is a very basic thing to understand because it's so powerful in what you can get as a result.
So let's pick up with that. What do you see as the ways that organizations will successfully overcome those obstacles?
Well, I think having and condoning sort of, I'm part of an AI strategy sort of cohort at this at this parent company, Barry Waymiller, and you have folks like me who are kind of purposely on the frontier of this thing, trying to explain some of these things. Let's not get model lock, from one vendor, et cetera, and then you know I think a lot of it is just and then creating sort of these discussions, these ongoing groups. So we have spawned into kind of actually we had one this morning, kind of a co-pilot early adopters group across our company. But
Mhm.
again, you're dealing with people at completely different skill levels and awareness levels. And I think the thing that inspires me the most is when I can sit and I can see somebody do something like we see it online with some of these AI influencers and educators. They do something like we were talking about Alex Northstar.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. That's a really cool approach to that particular knowledge task or thing. So just being inspired by each other, I think, is if we can somehow create ways to do that inside of our organizations and then give them the platform tools to be able to that support it so it's not messy. One thing about Copilot that I haven't found yet is anything close to what Boodlebox is doing in terms of having a way to communicate, to group prompt, group chat, build agents, play with different models that have different reasoning abilities and different context window lengths and so forth. That's the part I think that's missing in the approach that you're seeing from the big tech players.
That's great feedback. Thank you. So I want to shift instead of focusing on the challenges and obstacles you've had through your past year and previous to that, an opportunity to watch a lot of organizations go through that transformation. Going from a what you would call a standard organization empowered by normal technologies to becoming AI enabled and AI empowered. Um, could you give us an example, maybe one or two organizations? You don't have to name the
Mhm.
guilty by name, but
Yeah.
maybe talk about industries and what you've seen them do really well to go through that transformation.
Yeah. So I would say one of my favorite strategies. So I talk a lot about AI strategies, that you can deploy. My background more recently has been with industrial tech companies and manufacturing. So it's a great way for me to think about those sets of problems. But one of them, and again, this is a favorite one of mine. I call it enterprise memory. And it's basically the idea that everything we know in a company. So today, so pre-AI, you hope you write stuff down and you have good standard operating procedures and you have experts throughout your company. But there's churn. They leave, we're constantly sort of trying to play catch up, and then you bring someone new into a role. There's going to be a learning curve, no matter how good they are. If they're the world's best engineer, now they got to learn how to apply my best engineer mindset to a new problem set, different machinery, whatever. Cultures are different. So what if you could capture all the memory of your entire company, and you could do it every single day, and you could just keep building that corpus, right? And then you could literally spin up agents and bots that understand all the aspects, your best sales and marketing practices, your best operating procedures, your best coding standards if you're building software, all these things. And I think one of the strategies, so a lot of it right now is where does that data reside? It's literally in the heads of a lot of people. And so one of the strategies we're working on with a few of our companies is to record information, like literally record interactions. A good example, we've launched a project to record, and you would think, okay, wait a second, don't we already do this? Well, there's a lot of industries that don't record interactions with customers. If you're in the banking industry, they always say, hey, this call is going to be monitored and recorded. They already have an advantage because they can use those transcripts. A lot of companies don't do that. They have people talking to customers every day, and they're not recording anything. And so we're going to put in place literally using some of the AI, the whisper type, transcript tools to immediately transcribe calls, troubleshooting calls with customers that are sometimes of very technical nature, sometimes of a process nature, and getting this together, running them through prompts behind the scenes once you get the transcript, and then outputting this sort of perfect, not only a call report, which by the way are useful to help get paid faster if you're billing work out to customers.
Right.
The faster you show them we had this call, we finish it and you owe us XYZ, but they save the technicians time, and they go right into think of it like a giant FAQ document. So the language model listens and listens. So if a good example with the company I'm thinking about is they tend to have very expensive technicians dealing with very routine problems every single day that you could easily synthesize into an FAQ type document. And so that's one of the other derivatives of this thing is, okay, as we record this, let's build this corpus. So, and it's not so much to say that the day that technician leaves, you can spin up a bot, but we're trying to change the way they work. So these guys will become more orchestrators of these models that can do a lot of that sort of cognitive, I call it toil, the stuff that nobody, I got to answer the same question to a different customer for the third time this week. I'm just tired of it. Well, let the bot do that thing.
Exactly.
They get bumped up when there's something that it's unique and new. Now they can get creative, and those are higher value things. So that's an example of one that we ran the numbers on it, the ROI on this thing. And by the way, you can use a model to help you come up with the ROI. So 165 technicians in this one division of our company, and you give them an average annual, like a billing rate. We bill these guys out for $200 an hour. What would be the ROI, the economic impact of allowing them to get rid of 80% of the stuff that you can literally just have a language model automate for you, and then focusing on there's more billable opportunities, and they have their time of the day back. Now we don't know what they're going to do with their time. They might sit around and
Right.
shoot. I've seen them. The water cooler time might go up, but you're going to give them more valuable things to go and do and to apply that knowledge. So enterprise memory capture synthesis that you can use AI for, and then redeploying it with agents is an absolutely unbelievable use case, and you can apply it across industries.
See, that's such a great answer on so many different levels. We're in talks with a lot of consulting firms because of the persistent chat capability, we put into the platform. So now they can have multiple group chats to solve client issues, but they keep that one chat of truth, which is where all the deliverables go, where all of the team meetings go and everything else. And as you said, if one of their consultants leaves, they don't lose all of that knowledge. It's there. And even better, if a new consultant comes in 6 months later, having been a consultant before, what happens? You spend your first 3 weeks pulling people, taking people time out of other people's schedules to ramp yourself up and get there. And now on day one, new consultant walks in and they've got all the history of the engagement and can move forward. I love how you hit on the ROI, because there's a definitive cash ROI for the business, which is where the leadership is going to be looking. And that's something as we've incorporated into the platform. We give monthly ROIs for teams in looking at what they get back. And the results are, you didn't use numbers, I'll use some quick numbers, but we're seeing minimum 10x up to an 80x return on a monthly license.
Mhm.
And that becomes pretty significant justification on why you want to keep this tool and figure out, is there a way to optimize the tool even more and get an even greater return? But you touched on at the very end the other thing, which is you're giving the employee time back. Now, what they do with that time and how they do it to become more productive for the business, or is it just a general happiness? Hey, I
Yeah.
have an 8-hour workday. My boss was throwing 10 hours of work at me. I always felt like I was behind. Turns into, I have an 8-hour workday and I'm actually able to go take a leisurely lunch with my colleagues and build some bonding where I don't want to go look for another job because I'm happy with the work environment here and I'm producing well. And so that kind of multiple ROI is a really valuable thing. So I know we're coming up on, want to leave with get one final thought. If anybody's got questions, throw them in the chat. If we can't get them, we'll send them back out. But you've gone very deep, Stephen. I appreciate it, on kind of higher level leadership, where we can go, strategies we can pursue. Let's talk to that person who's like, all right, I'm behind. I'm in that group that's behind, but I don't want to become the hall monitor. What are the first steps that you think leaders, mid-level managers should be taking if they want to try and bring AI into their organization, if they want to become an AI-empowered organization?
Well, first of all, yeah, don't worry about falling behind, because even the best of us that are following this scene, it's impossible to keep up with all of it. And so a lot of what you're relying on are these new muscle memory skills you're building that are sort of cognitive automation skills that you have. And I think that's where you need to sort of invest. That's where I would recommend is just start finding, pick a model, any model, just start working with some of the things you do every day. Don't give up, and the other thing I would say, and I know this is going to sound self-serving, go to a conference or an event, find like-minded people that also want to learn to do this. And I can't emphasize how important, some of these things like Imagine AI Live are, that we're creating. It's not just an online forum. Sometimes an online forum or community kind of gets a little harder to join. There's a lot of them out there. This is in-person learning. So you're networking, you're learning, you're seeing examples, and you're making great contacts that can expand your professional life beyond, as you start becoming an AI first professional. To me, that's going to be extremely important going forward.
Awesome. Steve, it's not self-serving at all. As I said at the outset, I learned a lot going to the conference. And I think one of the pitfalls of being a co-founder and being immersed in building a startup business is you kind of get blinders on. And it was so refreshing to get there and, number one, see people who were equally immersed in their own things, but also that you had so many people there from industry who were trying to take that first step. And so as someone building a business, it was great to get that feedback. So not self-serving, great advice. Conferences can be hugely valuable. And that's a huge step for me from 8 years ago, where I thought conferences were nothing but boondoggles. So Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. So insightful. Really appreciate your time. And everybody who's listening, if you haven't thought about it, please do look at Imagine AI Live. Wonderful opportunity, both for learning and for just building out your network in the AI space. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great day.